Hello and welcome to Trad Jazz Today. Dan Zeilinger has been a world-traveling trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of his most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at the Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials around the world. Dan has met many people during his career and has spent many hours on and off stage with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on weekends with their friends. They all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, Dan will be sharing them with you. Now, Dan Zeilinger.
Hi there, this is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today. My next guest is somebody who I've known longer than I'd like to admit, and a personal hero of mine, Mr. Larry Wright. Hello, Larry.
Dan.
So, were you born in Newport Beach?
No, I was born.
Okay, you weren't hatched.
See, you got it half right. Oh, by the way, I want to thank you for allowing me to use notes, because having absolutely no memory, I'm going to have to refer to some notes because.
Me too.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Woohoo!
What was your name again?
Dan Zeilinger.
Ah, well, I'm Larry Wright, and I'm so glad you agreed to talk to me.
Yeah. No, I was born in a log cabin in Los Angeles.
Oh.
Second generation Angelino. And I lived in North Hollywood until I was about 6 years old, and then moved down to Newport Beach, and that's when my life started, around 58.
6 years old. Okay. I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, and I moved away when I was 5. So I understand.
Yeah, it seems like a commonality that people don't want their kids to remember anything about it.
Now, I know a little bit about you, but not a whole lot about your parents. Were they musical?
Yes.
Well, thank you. Okay, next.
No, my dad and mom were both from a radio background, and my dad played in the NBC Studio Orchestra in Hollywood for NBC. My mom was the organist and everything else at KFAC, which was the Auburn Chord radio station in Los Angeles. And she eventually moved over to NBC, and that's where they met. And almost every show that came from Hollywood, my dad was in the orchestra.
What did your father play?
He played reeds.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he was a phenomenal musician. Unlike myself, he actually he showed me what he did occasionally, and his abilities were unbelievable. I've known people like this, and I have no concept of how they do this, but he could sit down and just transpose stuff, which was required all the time, because you'd have a guest star that came in after you've rehearsed everything, and the guest star, like Dinah Shore or somebody else, would come in, and 2 minutes before the airtime, she'd say, I can't do this. Can you bring it down like three half steps? And they're on the air.
Oh my.
And with as you know, or maybe the people out there don't know, but if you ever listen to an orchestra, you listen to the reeds, and the brass people are doing the melody and a little bit of counterpart, but the reeds are going diddly 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 diddly. Now imagine having not basically just one rehearsal in the original key that the thing is written, and then they have to transpose it.
Oh, Lord.
My dad did, you know, and I've seen other people do that. You had Paul Woltz on. I've seen Paul practice his bassoon, and the bassoon is written in 2 clefs. It switches between treble clef and bass clef And that means that you're essentially in two different keys. And the rehearsal sheets that Paul used, I would sit there and look at him and figure this guy's from the moon. He's doing odd number of bars that switch back and forth. So he's doing switch, switch, like this. And not being a musician myself, I have no idea how that's done, but my dad could do it, and he was in very much demand, playing with orchestras like John Scott Trotter's orchestra, Meredith Willson, who did the Music Man, and many, many others that kept him in good stead for 15 years.
Amazing. Was the fact that he was such an accomplished musician make you push away from doing that?
Oh no, my dad, he didn't give a darn about me, whether in third grade, I came home and I had this note and I said, here. And he looked at the note and it says, your son has an aptitude for music. Can you get him an instrument and we'll put him in the band? And my dad looked at me and he says, are you interested in playing in the band? And I said, I haven't got anything else to do. That was
the conversation. Huh?
Well, this was my attitude for just about everything in my entire life, including this interview. So
I have nothing else to do?
So he said, well, what kind of instrument would you like to play? Now, this is strange because when he asked me that question, I intuitively, and this is strange because I was in third grade, and I don't know how I knew this, but I intuitively understood that the trombone was only played by screw-ups. People who were iconoclasts, people who didn't belong anywhere, they played the trombone.
It's true.
I didn't know why I knew this, but anyway, my dad said, well, that's a very good choice. No. And so he led me over to his, the hall closet, because he kept all the instruments that he ever played. We're talking about all the different saxophones, including a bass saxophone, flute, piccolo, clarinet, bass clarinet, all sorts of different instruments. And he said, pick one. So being, I don't know, what's third grade? Age 6 or something like that?
Oh, yeah. I'm the wrong person to ask.
So I looked in there and I grabbed the largest one I could carry, which was the alto saxophone. And then I went in and played.
Saxophone's actually a very intuitive instrument, you know. Personally.
I mean literally. He gave it to me. He didn't show me how to assemble it.
No.
He gave me the instrument. I showed up in the band room at the elementary school, and I opened it up, I looked at it, and I thought, well, there seems to be some multiple parts to it. And so I just kind of figured, okay, well, let's see. Is there anybody else around here that, oh, this guy's playing something that looks like mine. I see, okay, the black thing goes on the top, and there we go, okay. And I opened the music, and I started playing.
Which school was this?
This was in Newport Elementary and in Newport Beach. Kind of a cool school. It's about the only school I know of where it's actually on the beach.
Oh my!
Yeah, when you went to recess, you went down on the beach, played in the sand, and if you're an idiot, you'd go down and you play in the water, you know. But it was a situation where I've never had any instruction on anything in my entire life. I think I knew at that early age that practicing did not make you money. And so I didn't see any benefit in practicing. Essentially what I did was I looked at the people around me, heard what they were playing, looked at the music and said, okay. And that's how I started. So I played alto saxophone. I wasn't really interested in music. And I had a passing interest in the mechanics of music. And so by the time I got to junior high, I thought, I really like things that have mechanics, and drums appealed to me. Also because I have a violent temper, and I could, you know, if you play drums, you never have ulcers. You give them, but you never have them. And so I decided I want to play drums, and I told my dad, I want to do this. And he says, oh, that's very nice. No. And so I said, okay. So I started building drums. This was I was about 11 years old, okay? And I was just going into junior high, and they had metal shop and wood shop, and I started building. I built an entire set of drums with cymbals that I spun the forms on pieces of wood, put into a wood lathe, and then hammered them out. And dang, if they didn't sound pretty good. And I welded together a hi-hat stand. That's the stand that has the two cymbals that go like that on a drum set. And I put together a couple of different things acting as drums. And over the years, my dad decided, okay, and he started bringing back pieces of drums. He brought back a snare drum. I had to make the stand for it. I had all sorts of different things involving that. And then I didn't do any kind of practicing per se. I love to just sit down and whack the heck out of the things, and enjoyed playing basically, which was a extended solo. You know, I'd come home from school, and then I'd sit down, and I would sit down and play, not to records necessarily, but just an hour's worth of banging on the things. Very enjoyable for me, you know. And I was not really planning on doing anything, except that I enjoyed, as I say, you know, these things are beautiful to look at. And I actually, I got my first criticism because I would do this. I'd come home from school and I'd just close the door into my bedroom and have the drum set. And there were a whole bunch, there was an hour's worth of just banging away. And I'm doing this one time. My drum set faced the door. And apparently I didn't latch the door very carefully. So I'm whacking away, and the door slightly opens. And here's my sister's black kitty cat. And it's a kitty cat because it was like it wasn't full grown yet. It was a kitten. And so I look down, and the kitten pokes his head around, comes in and sits down in front of me. And I look at it and go, okay, get a load of this. Just like an extended solo, and I thought I was some really hot stuff. And I finish, and I look down at the cat and I say, well, I'm not exaggerating this, okay? This is not for show. It's not coming up with a story. This truly happened. The cat got up, looked at me. Now, this is a little girl cat, okay? And those of you who have cats know what that means. So this little girl cat comes walking up to me, and I'm looking at her and thinking, okay, I'm so good I can impress cats. And the thing immediately turns around and sprays the front of the bass drum and then calmly leaves. that was my first criticism. And I realized then, well, okay, if I can't do it for the glory, I'll do it for the money.
And that made you a believer of reincarnation.
I don't know who that was. Anyway, I started playing alto saxophone in the. I continued on into high.
And hang on a second, because I want about you building your own stuff for the kit. That kind of carries over into the fact that one thing I do know about you is you're very much an inventor and builder of things. I guess what's the correct name for that now? They call them creators or people. Who, yeah, and was that all part and parcel of like making hi-hat stands and things that bail belly button lint and those kind of things?
That is so extensive that I probably would require another session to do that stuff. This session, I'm going to pretty much concentrate on the music aspect of my life.
Okay, then I will make sure to book you for another one for stories, like I did with Bill Dendle.
Oh heavens! No pressure there. Thank you. Okay, so here's what happened in
junior high, right?
Junior high. That was Horace Ensign Junior High in. It wasn't called middle school. It was called junior high. You know, and it had basically 2 grades, the 7 and 8. And so I was in the band there, and we had a teacher. His name was Richard Watt, and I was Peck's bad boy in this situation. There were lots of players young kids who were fairly good, and he had very short temper with people like me, and I was on the receiving end of chalk and erasers.
What's a person like you?
Iconoclast who basically doesn't care about anybody else.
Okay.
You know, I was there just to waste time. You know, school was not anything except for an activity to do, and so I was in the school band there, and so he would ignore me. He wasn't a teacher for me. And I'll have to say, because I have heard you ask people, you know, who was your influence? I was my influence.
That wasn't him, in other words, yes.
I never had an influence. I never had a teacher. I never had anybody that did anything other than non-musical teachers. When I listened to the Firehouse Five, when I got to that point in a long while, and I'd listened to the Firehouse Five, I appreciated the music, of course, but for me, it was seeing what Ward Kimball was doing that carried over from vaudeville and how to entertain people, not the music, you know. So anyway, I was my first foray into doing anything that's in the purview of what we're doing here. I was in the orchestra, and there was a piece called Cadenza. I don't know who it was written by, but it was a piece that had essentially 2 main parts to it, and it was separated by a cadenza. Now, for those of you who don't know, a cadenza is just a little, I don't know, it's about a 15-second opportunity to solo. Okay, it's something added to the mix. And the way they did this, and I have no idea where this came from, but it was a thing where everybody in the orchestra, we played the first part of it all together. Then you had the cadenza, and you would pick everybody, because everybody had the cadenza written out on their music. Then as soon as it was finished, And it was just a very simple thing. It was da 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 da, la da 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 da. And the orchestra came in again, with all sorts of wonderful, march type of feeling to it for the final 16 bars of this thing. Okay, so you had all of these kids, and everybody had a shot at it. And Mr. Watt ignored me. And I felt I was doing my job. But finally, the rest of the kids, we got to the end of the school year, and they said, you've let everybody take this thing except you know who. And so he said, okay, let Lawrence take it. And so we got it to went through the whole thing there, and I didn't disappoint him. I took off on a complete minute's worth of ad lib. Okay, I'm just sitting there with a sax. I completely ignored the music, and just sitting there with a saxophone and taking off on something. I have no idea what I played, but I thought it was better than what was written. And so finally get to the end there. And the one thing, I take excursions all over the place to this day, where I will go into another key, I will go into another song, I will go into all sorts of different excursions that have nothing to do with what we're playing, as you know. I should mention to people out there that I have befuddled Dan any number of times, and to his credit, he always knows where I'm coming in. But at this point, I went through the whole thing, and then I came in with the notes that says, okay, now we're supposed to end this thing and go into that last part. And so we did that. And I got called on the carpet for that. He says, what are you doing? He says, why did you do that? And I said, I thought it was better than what was written. And I'll give you a little, we'll jump ahead because this is kind of interesting. 20 years later, maybe 30 years later, I'm playing a gig. And remember that this junior high was filled with really, really good musicians. I've always been the worst musician in the band, and I strive for that because it's the most fun. You're laughing.
Well, striving for being the worst is humorous.
But it actually is what kept me going. I want to surround myself with greatness. I don't want me to be the best and have lousy players accompanying me. That's not nearly as fun, unfortunately, today.
Well, I have to say there's a difference between wanting to play with people that are better than you and striving to be the worst.
Okay.
That's all. That's why I was laughing.
I am not striven. I am not striving at all. And anyway, I was playing a gig, a casual gig, a put together band at a bay club, and we're doing a set, and we finish, and a gentleman comes up to me, and he looks at me and he says, "Aren't you Lawrence Wright?" And I said, "Yeah." "You went to Horace Ensign?" "Yeah." I'm starting to get real paranoid now, in this day and age, that kind of thing is stalking material, And so I said, "Yes." And he says, "You had the band instructor was Richard Watt?" I said, "Yeah." "I'm Richard Watt." And I look at it, I said, wow, okay. Now, immediately the thought hit me. I didn't look this way when I was in junior high, when I was 12 years old. Okay. I had actually a full head of hair. I had glasses on, but I was 100, probably at that time I weighed about 100 pounds soaking wet. And how did he recognize me? How did that happen? So anyway, we got talking a little bit, and he said something which I don't know if it's baloney or whatever, but he told me, he says, "You're still playing." And I said, "Yeah, I'm still playing the same saxophone that you saw me play back then. As a matter of fact, that saxophone was my dad's saxophone, who played it in the orchestra. We bought it new in 1934. And he says, "Oh, that's amazing." He says, "I got to tell you something. You are the only person from the time I had at that school, which was about 9 years, you're the only person I've ever met who has become a professional musician." And I said, "I am so sorry."
Exactly. I thought to myself just now, that look on my face was, that should say something more about your teaching than about me.
I just accepted it as a compliment because that's what I do. I accept compliments even when they're not directed towards me, as you know.
Well,
Anyway,
that's an amazing tribute to you then.
Yeah. So anyway, I continued on building bigger and better drum sets. Continued on with not learning music. As I said, I didn't have any interest in anything other than mechanics, so I'm going to do something. You asked me to do this thing.
Yes, sir.
And I was trying to figure out all of this time, I really don't have much to say. I don't really consider myself any kind of a role model, any kind of thing, even though I am mentoring people these days. I do teach people different instruments, but I don't really consider myself anything other than what I initially started out as, and that's just a utility player who knew what to do.
Well, can I ask you some questions then?
Okay.
When was the first time you heard hot jazz and it said something to you, or it was something you wanted to do?
Well, I always appreciated music, and I was eclectic like you wouldn't believe. One of my favorite records was Soupy Sales.
Right.
Do the Soupy Shuffle, and I loved Henry Mancini's stuff, the Baby Elephant Walk and things like that. Peter Gunn, all the different aspects to this is one thing I tell kids, and I say kids because I'm an old fart. I am old. I'm an elderly person, and I get to play that card. So anyway, I tell these kids because I do have sympathy for them, but one of the things that really was glorious in being able to grow up in the 1960s, and you probably remember this too, it even goes back to the 50s, but I said, here's what people like me would do. You'd get your little transistor radio. It was a little stupid transistor radio, and you never used the earphone in it. You just turned it way up until it distorted like crazy. And you listened to AM radio in the Los Angeles and Orange County area. And you'd go down to the beach, and within an hour, you'd hear all of these things together. You'd hear the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, you'd hear Roger Miller, Winchester Cathedral, Louis Armstrong, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all sorts of singers, the various different pop singers. And it was a huge smorgasbord of stuff. And it was great because you listened to it and you'd hear something and say, I don't like that. Dismiss it. Come back and you'd say, wow, okay, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. Okay, I like that. I'm going to go buy the record. And in those days, you bought records, not just to listen to the music, but to spend lots and lots of time with the covers.
Yes, I had whipped cream.
Yes, everybody did. And that was what you lived with. You know, you'd sit down, you'd lay on the floor, put the record on, and just, you know, there you go. That's living. But you'd listen to the radio, and you'd be able to have a choice. And unfortunately, people do not they do not offer the choice of different musics that we had in those days. And it just got to the point where I would start listening to stuff, and the things that appealed to me were the things that I glommed onto. I gravitated towards those types of things. And I didn't know. And the weird thing is, when my dad was in the orchestra, he played with all sorts of people that would come over to the house for parties and such. And I didn't know who these people were. There were people like, well, like the orchestra leaders that I just mentioned, John Scott Trotter and Meredith Wilson came over, you know, and I'm a little kid there, and you know, I'm annoying them. And there's all sorts of people like Manny Klein. Now, Manny Klein is a very, very underrated player. He was one of the people in the studio. And when I say studios, I'm talking about radio, TV, movies, and musical theater in downtown Los Angeles. You know, played with the studios, MGM, you know, all these different movie theaters and all sorts of things. And that's what he was doing by the time that I came around. I had no idea that he played with Bix. He's on recordings with Bix Beiderbecke. And this is a sample of what goes on. As a matter of fact, when I started getting interested in some Dixieland, one of the family favorites, one of the people that used to come by all the time was George Van Eps. Now, George Van Eps, to me, as many, many kids in many boys in the 1950s, we used to love model trains. Everybody loved model trains. That's what it was all about. George Van Eps owned a model train store in Studio City. So when I lived up in North Hollywood, my dad would take me over to the store, and I'd drool looking at all the different trains and such. And George, who is a very good friend, he and his wife were friends of my mom and dad, and they were social friends. And I'd sit there looking at the stuff that he would show me. And one of the things that he was very proud of was, and he showed me a picture of the engine. He never showed me the engine, but he built a live steam train that was 1 inch long. Okay, he actually built this thing. It took him a year to figure out whether the steam would actually operate, being that small. And he was very, very proud of this whole thing. And well, he should be, because he was an excellent machinist. He built this thing, you know. And so that's the way that I knew George Van Eps up until I was around 17 years old. And so I'm looking through all of the used bins in the different stores, and I find a Dixieland band. It was one of the Matty Matlock things. I'm not sure if it was the Jack Webb thing. Can't remember exactly, but it had George Van Eps listed. I came home and I said, Dad, is this our George Van Eps? He says, oh yeah. And I said, he plays guitar? And my dad says, a little. And,
Understatement from your father again.
yeah, so basically, I was more interested in the mechanics of stuff until I got to the point where I realized that I could get paid to play. And in my entire life, I set the bar for getting paid, and there were in my entire life. Now I started around 1963, and so that means that it's for 57 years I've been playing music, different types of music. I'm not going to go into the other types. That's for another show. But I was fortunate enough to be able to play a lot of the stuff I had a passion for, which was trad, jazz, Dixieland, and ragtime and swing. And so I was able to do all of that and get paid for it, with the exception of 4 times in my lifetime, which I wanted to do something to give back. In other words, play for charity.
Yes.
4 times, and I made the decision not to get paid. So if any of you newbies are standing out there looking at this stuff, well, sit down, get a chair. Oh, wait a minute. No, I digress. You ought to realize that there used to be a demand for this. Dixieland bands were wonderful, and I can't tell you how many Ross Dress for Less places I've opened. It's wonderful for them because they hire the band, we stand outside, we don't need electricity, we don't need a stage, we don't need anything. And the booking agents used to go, oh, this is cool, we'll put you in there. When is it? Tomorrow morning. Good. And we're out there and we're doing this thing. Then we'd go inside and usually play in front of the women's lingerie departments while the women are embarrassed to be buying stuff. So playing for money, that was the critical thing. And I realize this makes me sound very mercenary. Good.
Well, now
now here is the thing that I came up with. And I hope this is satisfactory for you. What's your name again, Dan?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Can I look at my notes?
You may,
Oh.
because I'm looking at mine.
Yeah, it was Dan last time I looked.
Okey-dokey.
You're not going into a wrap-up comment, are you? Because if you are, there's some things I want to ask you before that.
Hardly.
Okay, good.
The thing that I came up with is something that no single person or married person has known about me in my entire life.
Wait a minute, I got to pay attention.
Yes. No,
Okay.
I've never told anybody. I've never put together this. And what it is, I thought maybe you might be interested for as long as you can stand it.
I'm always interested.
That makes me laugh. Okay. I have a list of the bands because you indicated when Dan contacts me, folks out there and others, he says, oh, well, here's some of the, he wants to know about my early training, my early interest in music. He wants to know what bands have you played with?
Yes.
That's the crux.
I have my own list also, yes.
You're not, okay, well.
I'm sure it's not, yeah.
Okay. I limited this to being a steady member of a group for at least 2 months.
Okay.
Okay. So that cuts out all of the casual gigs, cuts out all of the things that tried to go for 1 night or 2 nights and didn't make it, all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
Which is a huge amount. But these bands are all, I was a regular member, okay? Not just a
Irregular, depending on the diet.
Yes, I had 2 months worth minimum.
Okay.
A lot of them went for years, So if you would like, I can start with this.
Please do. And I'll check off my list if to see how accurate I was.
Okay, the first job that I had was in a venture style band where I played drums and doing Miserlou and Telstar and all these wonderful tunes. That, of course, is not trad jazz, but it was a blast to do. And this was around 12 years old, okay? I'm sorry, 13. And so I had found, living in Newport Beach, I happened to find somebody who could play lead guitar. That's the important thing. And so I'm playing drums with that. I had to give that up because when you play venture style drums, the thing that you got to do that sounds, excuse the expression, bitchin', is that the drums have to be extremely tight. They have to make a pop. They have to make something that's really, really irritating. And, you know, when you're doing Wipeout and that stuff like that, if you have just a dumpy set of drums, it ain't going to cut it. So I had this thing and I found myself hearing the music. We played probably about 5 gigs with that band. And I was hearing the music the next day around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon because it was doing something to my hearing. And I said, I can't do this.
What was the name of the band?
Pardon?
What was the name of the band?
I don't remember. I don't remember that. There's some things that I may have in my boxes of stuff, but it was something that I really, really loved to do. But and of course, surf music, that was the actual first run of surf music. And in later times, I have played with others, and they look at me and go, "So how's this supposed to go?" You know, you played Mustang Sally, and I said, "Yes." and they said, "Well, you were there. How's this supposed to go?" And I said, "As far as possible." You know. So anyway, that was my first one. Okay. Now we're heading along in my my high school. There was a band that was put together from the pep band in which I played drums, and it was called the Happy Jazz Band of Newport Beach. And it contained Paul Woltz, Randy Woltz, the Woltz's father at times. And I think we did quite a bit. It lasted for quite a few years. Mostly the one thing that I can think of that was really interesting is that we would play in all sorts of places in Orange County, mostly Newport Beach. And we'd play and the place would burn or sink or fall apart or have a car come into it, you know, or crash into it, or it would go out of business. This was the curse of the Happy Jazz Band. By the way, the Happy Jazz Band, yes, it was named for Jim Cullum's group in San Antonio, Texas. The leader of the band really liked that band, and so we did it as a tribute. So there you go. Okay, so now we're moving along to the Orange Coast College stage band. Okay, and that is unusual. You've had people on like Tom Kubis. I played second tenor saxophone in the stage band, and that was not too hard to jump from the alto sax to the tenor sax, but I still had no idea what I was doing. Okay, and essentially everything that I did, if you want to define, if you want to look in the dictionary under fake it, look under Larry Wright, because that's all I am. I'm the world's biggest gigantic fake in the world, and I can't even fake being a fake by telling you what it is.
That's jazz.
Can we edit that? Okay. So
that's funny because Dr. Rutherford, the college, Orange Coast College dance book was just a great book, a lot of jazz standards.
Well, here's something that's interesting that a lot of people can't understand, especially educators. So you'll get a kick out of this. The stage band played gigs. We kept the money.
Yeah, they did when I was in it too.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's unheard of now. Oh, you make money? Well, we're putting it back into the band fund. We're going to buy some stands. We're going to buy some arrangements. No, we went out there. We had tuxes. We had to buy our own tuxes, but we'd go out and play proms and dances at the bay clubs and stuff like that, and we were getting like about $30 a night, and this was in 1969 or 70, you know, and we'd go out, we'd play these things, and then we'd pocket that money. Now, I like that.
Yeah, I know.
And so
Doc was good about that.
This went along. By the way, Doc once sat in with the Happy Jazz Band on Cornet. We couldn't get our cornet player wasn't able to make a gig, and he came in, did a great job. This is Doc Rutherford,
Sure.
the instrumental teacher at the college, and he was a marvelous fellow, frequently clueless, but we wouldn't have given him up for anything. So anyway, the interesting thing was there were lots of places that we played that were of extracurricular activities. We got invited to a lot of places. Oh, by the way, let me digress, because you're an educator, okay? And I'll tell you this: the high school band that I played with, we were essentially all showboats. As a matter of fact, that's what we called ourselves. Technically the sailor band from Newport Harbor High, but we were all showboats, and that's the way we started every song. Showboats, okay. My train derailed.
We're talking about Newport Harbor Band and how everybody was a showboat.
Yeah, I know.
And what was that?
That part I got, but
was that Richard England?
no, that was I remember what it was. No, it was Ed Craig.
Oh, okay.
And everybody, we were supposed to do marching, and we did marching after a fashion, but we all realized that it wasn't important to us. And so we would take what he gave us as a starting point, and then we would do our own thing. The entire band, except for a couple of clarinet player girls that always towed the mark. And we, because we didn't care, we started winning awards. Okay, so we got all these awards, and one day we come in, and Mr. Craig comes in, and he says, "I think I know the answer to this. I have to ask you anyway. How many of you would like to march in the Rose Parade?" And at that point, he was pelted by everything that we were holding, our lunches, the sheet music, everything. He was just standing there taking it like Oliver Hardy as we're going, poof, you know, and he says, "I'm going to take that as a no." So, you know, we never did march in the Rose Parade.
An entire band of anarchists.
Yes, yeah. So anyway, one of the things that was kind of interesting was in Orange Coast College Band, which was called the Riffs, by the way, for all of you trivia fans. That's actually a pretty good name. I like that. You know, the Riffs. A riff is a pattern. If you're doing something where the drum goes or something like that, you know, that's a riff. But I think the fascinating thing about that era was that we were able to get into all sorts of festivals, and the festivals weren't rife like the way that they became. There were only a couple festivals, and one of them was being held at Orange Coast College.
Right.
Another one was up in Reno. Okay, so we decide, okay, let's go up to Reno, and we can have a fun time up there. Okay, so At the time, I was driving a hand-me-down car for my dad. It was a 1961 Peugeot sedan, kind of one of these
504 or?
a 404.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like an Inspector Clouseau type of little car, and I guess I'm going to have to get into a little bit of the invention. I was a big James Bond fan, and so I tricked out that car with James Bond stuff, okay, because I was making student films with other people, and we were using this for student films. So I needed to get to the bus at the college because I was going to donate my battery. One person had a recorder that you could record 8-track tapes on. So he recorded Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Duke Ellington and all sorts of different things that were really great. And we came out with all these things, and he took the player out of his car, and all it needed was a battery. So they conscripted my battery, and I was supposed to show up. Well, it's getting close to that time, and I found myself I needed to get there in a hurry. So now, you see, being the loser that I am, I can't do anything without getting caught. So I'm in my little car here, and I'm racing to the college, and I stop at the stop sign, but not really. And I'm rolling through the stop because I think in my poor little demented noggin, I have to get to Orange Coast College very quickly. So I roll through the stop sign, I look over to see the policeman, and I go, oh, jeez. I didn't even wait for him to stop me. I just pulled over and waited on the side of the road, okay? And he says, can I see your driver's license? Yes, here you go. This is, I said, I know what I did wrong. Give me the ticket. And he says, well, okay, you know, as long as you understand that you're not going to do that again. I said, no, sir, I'm not going to do that again. And he starts writing the ticket, and he looks in my car, and on the dashboard is a full James Bond thing with a radar that goes like that, and all the different controls for everything else. And he looks at it and he says, what is that? And I said, I make student films. That's just a prop. He says, does it work? And like an idiot, I said, yeah. And so I had to go through all of the buttons and the lights and everything and show him how it works. And he says, what's this for? And I said, that's for the antenna. And he says, show me that. Okay, so I reached down, and I had made this antenna that has a motor that goes like this. And you take it and put it up into the sunroof, and then close the sunroof and attach this thing in there, turn it on at the same time you turn on the thing like this, and this antenna is going like that. He's not smiling. He's not doing anything. He's just looking at it. And I'm going, oh gosh, I know what's coming next. And so sure enough, he's going through all of the stuff on that. And he asks me, what are those buttons? And I said, oh, okay, look, I'm really in a hurry. He says, you can be in a hurry or you can be in jail. I said, okay, I'm not hiding anything. Go to the front of the car. And he goes to the front of the car, and I hit one of the buttons. The license plate flips down, and a toy machine gun comes out and goes like that. He freaks out. He moves back. He's got his hand on his gun. And I go, oh, this is going well. And when he looks at it and finally realizes it's got a pink plastic tip to the machine gun, he realizes what it is. And so he says, okay. He says, well, good enough. He says, I don't want you to speed. I don't want you to go through any more stop signs. And I said, absolutely. Here's your ticket. So I am about 20 minutes late. The bus is running. And when I come up to the place there, I pull out my battery, hand it to him, and we take off within 5 minutes of me arriving there. Now, the upshot to that whole thing is that when you're going from Newport, from Costa Mesa to Reno, and you only have 5 8-track tapes to play over and over and over again, you get very, very tired. And when we came back, we didn't play a single one of them. Anyway, that was the highlight of my Orange Coast College career. Okay, we're getting into the Jeff Beaumont Fink Street 5 era here.
Oh, cool.
I played cornet and alto sax. That featured people like Brian Shaw, Dan Barrett, Bill Mitchell, Paul Woltz, Steve Resnick, if those names mean anything.
By the way,
They don't mean anything to me.
Yvonne Mitchell gave me Bill Mitchell's scrapbooks that I'm now archiving and scanning. So just to let you know.
Well, the Fink Street 5, we had a bunch of simpatico people, and we ultimately all kind of had the same interest in things. Many of us had an interest in antique cars, and we owned antique cars. I had a couple of Model Ts and a 1909 Buick, 1910, and but it was rather interesting because I had just taken up cornet, and again, I learned it not for any reason other than someone said, we need a trumpet player. And like what you do when you go out for auditions as an actor, you never say no. They said, can you play the trumpet? And I said, yeah. And so I told my dad, I need a trumpet. And he says, oh, and he came back with an 1880s flugelhorn with rotary valves. And that's what I learned on. And strangely enough, for those of you who may not know, Bix Beiderbecke was a very, very unusual self-taught musician using all the wrong fingerings in the valves. And that actually eventually helped him to play things that no one else would even try. Well, for some reason, this looked very logical to me. You know, it's basically the 3 valves extends the length of the tubing in the horn. And so I was able to figure that out and learn the horn within 3 days of them needing a horn. So I played that on the first job that I had with the flugelhorn, and I said, "Oh, this is not that difficult." And Jeff Beaumont, leader of the Fink Street 5, said, can you do that? How about if you get a cornet and do that? So I did, and we went out, and one of the first jobs that we played was a 9-hour job for an opening of a Palm Springs mall. This was around 1969, I guess, or something like that. And this mall on Route 111 down in the southern end of Palm Springs was opened, and we rode around in, I think, a 1908 autocar playing for 9 hours straight in the heat in Palm Springs. And so that was an auspicious beginning for that kind of thing. We did recordings because we all had wax cylinder players and 78 RPM record players that we've all restored. Jeff had a magnificent, huge Edison wax cylinder player. And so we got a bunch of transcription cylinders that they used to have for dictaphones. And so you scrape it down. The machine has a little lathe on it that scrapes it down, so it's brand new. And then we all jammed our horns, banjo, horns, washboard, whatever. We all jammed it into this recording horn, and we made a series of wax cylinders. I think Jeff may still have some of those. I gave him all the ones that I still had. So, but this band, we used to do, again, lots and lots of places, and one of the most memorable was we opened the Victoria's Secret store up in the area off the 210 freeway, the 10 freeway, as you get up near Francisquito Road or whatever it is. I forget where it is. But we had pictures taken of all of us in different areas, which we used for when we played the Pismo Beach Festival. And it shows Paul Woltz pulling a banjo out of a toilet seat, and different people with lingerie and everything, and the horns and such. So that is my early, that's before I became mature.
Now, where did piano and banjo come from in your repertoire?
Oh, well, you should ask. Not yet.
Okay, I'll wait. You tell me when.
Actually, there was one more thing with Jeff Beaumont. He put together the Silver Cornet Band. And this was real interesting because we used turn of the century instruments, arrangements, and we played an entire summer of this was an organized thing, and we played out in the parks around Southern California with concerts in the park with this perfectly legitimate, it was authentic stuff, and here again, we had people like Dan Barrett and Brian Shaw played first cornet. I played second cornet. Steve Resnick, Robbie Rhodes played piano on it, and Hal Smith played drums for that thing. Okay, and that was a delightful way to spend the summer for that time. Okay,
so that was doing turn of the century music in the park type things, but it wasn't like a Civil War reenactment brass band.
No. It was the outfits, if I recall, I believe the outfits came from the movie The Music Man.
Okay.
And Jeff got all of those things, and we wore those for the thing. At that time, you could actually buy different movie memorabilia before they had the MGM auction,
Right.
And so that's what happened there. Okay, you wanted to know about piano?
No, I just because you've only told me now that you played alto and drums, and I know that you have a few other things in your arsenal. So
yes, well,
an ocarina.
Well, I played. The ocarina came from the fact that my dad had a whole bunch of ocarinas. When you play in an orchestra for anything in the old days, everybody had to know the ocarina.
That was a double.
As a double. So the reed players would have all these players, because it's like a harmonica set. Each one is best suited for a certain key. And so he had about 12 ocarinas, and the trumpet players had to have ocarinas, because a lot of times the saxophone players would be playing their saxophone. So you needed a ocarina section, trombones would learn how to play it. It's not difficult to get a minimal amount of expertise on it.
For the listening public that may not know what an ocarina is, sometimes it's known as a sweet potato. Most famously, it's the sound that was made of the pipe organ in Cinderella in the dwarf's cabin.
Actually, more common for most people is at the beginning of Warner Brothers cartoons, where it goes beep boop beep beep boop beep beep boop boop beep beep boop beep.
There we go.
That's two ocarinas and a bassoon. I'm sure probably Carl Stalling thought about that, but man, that blows my mind. Two ocarinas and a bassoon, all harmonized, Woo! So anyway, it was during the time that I was in Newport Harbor High, Paul Woltz and I, we decided we would take our lunch and eat outside of the band room. And we needed something to do after we ate. So we decided to start bringing our ukuleles. And we bought some ukulele books that told you how to play stuff like Birth of the Blues and all sorts of that type of thing. And then the music store in Costa Mesa, a place called Coast Music,
Sure.
decided to put in banjo ukuleles. And we looked at that and we thought, oh, this is it. Okay, so we both bought banjo ukuleles and we graduated from the ukuleles to these banjo ukes, doing the same thing, playing on the lawn, and eventually those we wended our way from those to actual banjos.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so that was where that went. We didn't have any place to play them. We just wanted banjos. Okay. Now, as far as the piano goes, I was trying to arrange music on the banjo. That's almost impossible because you don't know where you are on the stupid thing. You know, which finger is the trumpet line? Which one is the clarinet line? You know, all this kind of stuff. The piano is a much better visual medium to look at stuff and see where you are. And so I decided that would probably help me out. So in those days, my mom and dad had a condominium down Palm Springs. And so they'd leave for 3 or 4 days at a time. One time they came back and there's a piano in the house. And they said, is this yours? Yeah, it magically appeared here somewhere. So I'm starting to learn the how to arrange on the piano. Now, arranging piano, here's the technique for it. Like that, you know. So you're not really playing piano. You're just using it to keep track of where everything is. Well, Dan Barrett got a job. He got this marvelous job that was 2 nights a week at a place called Zuby's. It was a pizza place in Costa Mesa. And Dan wanted to put together a Turk Murphy style band that would play there. And he, bless his heart, he wangled 2 nights a week, Friday and Saturday night. And so he started talking about who's gonna play in this thing. I was supposed to play reeds. I was supposed to play clarinet. And Dan could not find, out of all of the great piano players, we were getting something like $50 a night. You know, it was pretty nice.
That's substantial for the time.
Pretty nice gig, and it lasted a year, you know. But nobody wanted to come down and do it. Robbie was busy at Disneyland, and Vinnie Armstrong was busy with his day job, you know, and all these other people didn't want to come down and even split it. So Dan, as a last resort, when you think of last resort, you think of me. And he said, can you play the piano for this thing if I put Mike Baird on the clarinet? And I said, well, I'm not really playing piano. He says, all we need is just boom, chink, boom, chink, boom, chink, boom, chink, boom, like that. Now, I realized by watching people like Robbie and Vinnie Armstrong that to really play well, you have to be able to do octaves. In other words, your hand has to stretch and be able to play an octave apart in the bass and in the right hand because you're playing melodies. And so I said, well, let me give it a try. I'll give it a try. I'll come back to me in a week and I'll see if I can do this. So for a whole week, you can't believe how painful pressing like this, because it's not just you're doing boom ching boom ching boom ching, and it was oh golly, every night I'd soak my hand in hot water because it was excruciating. And I finally got it to the point of where I could go boom, chink, boom, chink, boom, chink, like that. And when I played a solo, I would play without the left hand too much. I would just kind of accompany a little bit there. So we're talking bare bones. And I called up Dan and I said, give me a try, see what you like, see if you like it. And so we had a rehearsal. And at that time, Brian Shaw was playing cornet with the band. He eventually bailed on the thing, and Dan Comans ended up playing. Paul Woltz on tuba, Vince Saunders on banjo, Mike Baird on the reeds, and of course Dan Baird on trombone. And so we went to Dan's house and we started playing. We played one tune and Dan said, good enough. He says, we started in 2 days. And so we were there for a whole year.
Yeah, that's right about where I met you guys, about that point in time.
And you are again?
Dan Zeilinger.
Oh, yes, I do remember you. So
I get that reaction a lot on this show, actually.
We played that for a year, and then we played, this is going to make people, you never know how good it was until you've lost it, right? We went from that to a 6-night-a-week job playing for a full year. There was a place called the French Quarter, and it was a situation where this place was a really, really smoky dive. You could tell what it had a closed circulation system for the air conditioning. So you could tell what time it was by where the smoke was. And we played from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock. We all had other jobs. We all had full-time jobs. So we'd come in and play 6 nights a week with this thing. Mike Baird couldn't do all of them. So we put in other people for different days. We had Rick Fay and George Probert and Joe Derensberg all playing these different nights. And a lot of times, I mean, it was a bar. It was a dive, but there were some very, very bright spots in it. One of them being the Proud Mary episode, which we're playing to virtually nobody in the place there. And this guy comes in, he obviously got a date with an extreme hottie. And this woman comes in, she's got a t-shirt on and she's just built to the nines, I mean, what an incredible person. And so they're dancing out on the dance floor. There's nobody at the bar, and the place is pretty much empty. This is probably, I don't know, I guess about 11 o'clock at night or something like that. And so she comes in and they've been drinking, and so she's doing her little thing, the way that women like to dance, and this poor guy is standing behind her. He got the date, but he doesn't get the attention. So he's going, and she's doing this thing and she slips on the dance floor, goes down. Oh, let's see, how can I put this delicately? The world was exposed to culture at that point. He only had a t-shirt on. Okay, she had a t-shirt and some slacks or whatever, but nothing, there was no visible means of support.
Yes, I understand.
And so these little fellas suddenly jumped out and said hello to us. The band is starting, we kind of went, yeah. And she saw that, and she decided, well, the band's playing for her. She's going to play for the band. And so we played the next tune, and I'll not forget this. It was Basin Street Blues. Doesn't mean a thing. That was the only thing I could remember about the whole evening other than the obvious. And so she gets up and she starts doing this kind of
Gyrating.
Gyrating, yeah, that's the best word for it, I guess. And she's doing this kind of stuff, and she's lifting one side and then lifting the other, and the band isn't, there's no semblance of music. The whole band is going da da like that, you know. And this poor guy, this was the funny part. This poor guy is still behind her, and he's sitting there and he's looking like this, you know, like, oh, do I get any of this, you know? And she did not let him have any of it. She was playing to the band, and there is some more to this story after the fact, but that you'd have to ask Dan Comans about that.
Oh, okay. I've already interviewed Dan.
That was
That
was our Proud Mary situation. And then after that, we had another year of 2 nights a week with the Back Bay. That was the Back Bay career, you know.
Mr. Larry, you need to make a note on your notes that we are going to continue this again. And my producer just tells me I need to wrap up because Dan Levinson is in the wings.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I have the Back Bay Jazz Band, which I just recounted, is number 6.
Yes. Out of how many?
54.
Well, then we definitely need another show. Because I go from the Back Bay Jazz Band to Captain Larry's Whiz Band to the Jug Band to Son of Rosie's Titanic, the Rolling Pigs original drummer.
Yeah.
And of course, I have Curly's on my list.
I never was a regular member of Curly's.
Well, nobody is.
So no, there's some things that I would like to say, and I don't have to spend as much time on each one of them. A lot of them I can just zoom on through, but it is a singular thing. I don't think anybody was a member of a regular member of a band for 54 bands.
That's amazing.
So that's what I have to offer. That's all I got.
Well, that's plenty for me. And as
well,
you know,
we can make this a series.
Well, that would be good. You know, Bill Dindal has done 2 episodes of over an hour and 15 each, and so has Matt Johnson. And so I'm very open to several linked.
Okay, well, what you can do is when you put this thing on, and then if you can check with the 2 people that view it, find out if that's of interest to them, then we can continue on. But I've got things here which I didn't even remember that I did, and I had to do quite a bit of research on this stuff because people do not, you know, I'm a utility guy. Basically, what I did was my value was not necessarily, I'm not a great technician, but I know what is required in any position on the bandstand. Even
true. Can I tell you what else is one of your values?
I'm on time.
You're on time, and you know the songs. I mean, you know more tunes than just about anybody I know. And
that's the only value, you know. And
only
what I would
play
do,
every instrument. You know all the songs, and you're on time. What more is there?
Well, the thing is that I used to be very, very valuable to leaders because there have been times when leaders would put together a band and they couldn't get somebody. You know, a lot of times they'd say, "Larry, do you want to play clarinet?" Fine. And then they'd call me up and they go, "I can't find a banjo player. Do you know of any banjo players?" And I say, "Well, me." I said, "Can you get a clarinet player easier?" And they go, "Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Well,
Exactly.
you're on banjo." And that was the value, you know, and I made a whole career out of that.
And that's a wonderful thing. I don't know what I don't know how that can be an only.
You've had stars, you've had all-stars, you've had all sorts of magnificent players who have been, you know, world shakers on this thing. I haven't been that.
Well, I hate to tell you this, sir, but you are the most.
This is all I do.
You are the single most requested interview that I have for this channel.
Oh man, I would have prepared if I thought.
I didn't want to make you nervous.
Okay. Okay. Well, other than that, I don't have anything to sell. I don't have anything to say, and we'll give it a try. If we keep doing it, I might get it right.
Well, how you schedule this one, when you made out the schedule and then send it to us, you just do that exact same thing again on the exact same form. Just
I don't have a schedule.
no. Well, no. When we
I've got a
booked you for today-
colonoscopy coming up.
Okay, well, I want to know about it, and hopefully we can get some film.
Well, it's going to be, the exposure is going to be something else.
I played in worse places. All right, Larry, I better let you go. Thank you so much for doing this. And if it's not obvious, I love you, and I can't wait to do it again.
Okay, thank you.
Fred.
Fred, thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Thank you for watching Trad Jazz Today. Dan posts new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Make sure to check out the archive of past shows, and please give us a thumbs up when you subscribe to the channel. Bye.